Hello, everybody. It is Heather with the Leadership Heart podcast. And today I am very excited to talk to you and Rasmus Holst. And we are going to be talking about some very cool things as it relates to SaaS, human potential, AI, leadership, all kinds of things. So, welcome, Rasmus. I'm excited to have you on.
Excited to be here, Heather. Let's see if I can match that energy. Then we'll have a good one.
Okay, so tell everybody where you are right now in your leadership journey.
Right now in my leadership journey, I am 3 years a CEO, but a leader since more than 2 decades. There's a bit of gray hair, so I have passed the 50 years old. I've been lucky enough to be a leader in various sectors from telecom, software, now SaaS. And I've also been lucky enough to have teams in more or less the entire globe. So from Japan and Australia over Malaysia and Singapore, over Russia, to Denmark, to Germany, to England, to Italy, to US, Canada, and Brazil. So leadership for me is something that has always been global. It's something that's always been multicultural. And I think that regardless of how you get here, will shape the journey that you're on.
And right now you're hailing from Denmark in some like
I,
wonderful, beautiful like castle or palace. Tell us a little bit more about
um,
that.
I'm back in Denmark after having lived 14 years of my life with the family outside of Denmark, half of it in Luxembourg and half of it in the Bay Area. So also on the family side, a multicultural experience and a global experience, at least three very nice places. But good to be back in Denmark. I just forgot how dark the winters are, so that's where we're at now.
Crazy, but then thinking about where you're actually housed is another thing. Describe that for those who are listening. I just think it's so interesting.
It's a palace from 1684, built by a king. It was the first hunting palace north of Copenhagen. So that's from when you took your horse and carriage and traveled north. And then there would be hunting grounds outside and all those kind of things. It was a beautiful, big white palace, which when you arrive will look very spectacular. And when you come in, you will also find out that in 1684, you built things very differently to how you build it today. Not the most modern of our offices, but more like a very imposing outside structure with a full garden, 200 yards to go to the main door and all of those kind of things. So yeah,
That would be a first for my guests. I just have to say.
happy to do that. Next the week after next, we're hosting the SaaS community in the Nordics at the place. So they were also very like, yay, this is the first time we go to a palace. So
Oh, so very, very cool. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about, kind of what you do in your organization, how you serve different people in the world and the community. I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah, so I get to be the CEO on a day-to-day basis, and the product we build is a human success platform. We see that as performance, engagement, and learning. Those are the three components that we put into that. Underpinned by AI is basically the solution that we deliver. We deliver that globally. 50% of our business is in North America, 35-ish in EMEA, and 15 in Asia Pacific. So already at where we are with the business, it's become a global business. It's 200 people strong in the US, UK, Denmark, Germany, Romania, Poland, and Australia already, and growing pretty fast. So part of a great market, and the fact that we get to influence employees and make them better on their everyday life, check whether they're engaged and all of those types of things. Actually, for somebody like me who's worked also in cybersecurity, is a positive story of uplifting humans rather than having all the scary things that happens with cybersecurity. That's a different animal.
And
So
this is a learning management system, correct?
it is, and we would like to get away from the learning management. That's our heritage. That's how we've built the business. But we do believe that there's something bigger that companies should be looking for. We will all be needing to learn, and we will all be needing to get better every day. But we think that the way you elevate people and the way you build a high performance organization is actually that you learn, but also that you show up every day. I mean, somebody who's learning but don't show up every day, is that a valuable employee, or is that just somebody who's practicing for their next role? And the thing about putting in the engagement into practice and actually getting performance out of it is actually what you want out of these three things. So we think that learning, engagement, and performance actually stacks up to become that platform that we would like to call human success, because it starts not from the employer telling everyone what to do, but the employee, how can you contribute and how can you contribute the best? And the best example we can basically give people is if you think about an athlete, somebody who's running the marathon, if you actually train or learn, you basically put in the work that will understand how you will deliver the performance. If you show up for all of your training, your engagement, you also now actually know how quick can you run the marathon. And that's the hallmark of anyone who's really, really good at sports. It's not how fast they can run. Even a 4-hour marathoner or a 6-hour marathoner who's done all the training, they can tell you how fast they will run. And what is it that any organization want? They want an output for future performance of the business by their people. They already do so with renewals of contracts and how much money do they have next year and all of that. They're trying to look for future performance. And the best indicator is if you put in the work and you showed up, you can actually tell the future performance, because that's the hallmark of any runner. Any level, you don't have to be the most elite of the elite who can run sub 2 hours. You can be the one who finishes in the mid-pack or whatever. But if you showed up and you trained, you actually know the future performance. That's how, at least I believe, we're going to build high-performance teams.
It's interesting that you say that. I have a model, my caring leadership model, and at the center of the model it's kind of like the change underpinning, and it's awareness, desire, and stamina, like commitment. It's that same exact thing. Like if you put in the work, so if you have like the awareness, there's a hole there, a gap there that you're leaving for your people. You have a desire to fill it, and you have this like commitment for the long haul to see it through all the work you have to do. Then you can do what you're talking about, which is I can say that I know if we do these things, this is going to be our outcome. But if you aren't committed or don't have that stamina to stay with it for the long haul, really, and using tools like yours, for example, that kind of help them stay on track, you're never going to get to where you want to go. So it's funny how that completely overlaps there.
And it's very tightly integrated. And we wanted to talk about AI, and that's also how we think about that. Think about your AI coach on your Garmin or something like that. They actually try to help you find those pieces of motivation to keep the stamina and do that self-leadership. Because I feel for the longest time, and this has a little contrast in the business, but for the longest time, we always said learning was something, hey, you need to take these courses and then you will be great going forward. I actually think that mindset is shifting, that people say, oh, if I can do this, 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 and this, I can get to the next level. There is ambition on the side of the employee as well. It's not just the business that has and push on me, hey, Rasmus, what are you going to do? It's actually me who wants to do something, and I will see that. And obviously, AI is amazing at trying to find these patterns of what do you need to learn. Hey, if you check in, your engagement is a check-in function and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. If you check in, I have a problem, I have a blocker with somebody in another division, or I don't have the budget or anything, your manager can actually pick that up and react to it on a weekly basis. And this, again, is this, I think for the longest time, we've had these surveys that comes once a year. And yes, we're a great place to work. That's a once a year survey. It runs through. And depending on what the mood is on that day, it comes out in either you've done great or you've done negative. That's not what it's about. It's this every week. And if you do that with your manager, the whole thing becomes a rhythm, and the manager starts to be able to suggest, aided by AI, hey, here's some solutions to your problem. Here are some learnings you can take. Here's how you're struggling with your performance. Maybe you could do this or that. And those things are like the things we want to underpin with AI for the organization.
It's funny. You don't know this. I'm sure you don't. I have a new book coming out in January called The Art of Self-Leadership. And learning is at the core of everything. You can't get around it. In fact, I probably mentioned the word learning or growth or something like that probably, I don't know, 100 times in the book, because it is so very much true. Like if we want to be better, or if we want to be better for teams, or we want to be better for ourselves or our families, we have to lean into saying, what are the ways that we learn and grow? How would we sharpen our own, sword? How do we polish our own diamond? How do we do it? Instead of saying, like, I'm waiting for my manager to do it. I'm waiting for the executive team to do it. I'm waiting for the learning and development department to make me do it. Like using the tools, and then like really using the tools, being aware of it, having that desire still, and showing that commitment to saying how many more tools, how many more ways, how many more processes, what are the things I can do to just continue to polish myself? And I think that's really empowering, because you think about just how the workplace has been made up. It's most people are feeling quite powerless. They're feeling quite helpless. They're feeling like victims to other people. And so I love, that was the thing that attracted me to kind of the tool and the offerings you have, is the idea of somebody being able to take it in their own hands, really, and not waiting for someone else to give it to them.
Even, I mean, not even for me, also for me, I should say. I had a journalist call us. We just upgraded or changed the chairman of the board to an executive, Dave Willis, who's been very high up in Microsoft and all those kind of things. And then the journalist, he's actually interviewed us over the course of our journey, and he asked me, so how's this and what's the change and all of this, and also how about you, Rasmus, and what are the journeys that you're going? I always see you as kind of leagues of moving up. And then he said, what when you stated that you want to do a public offering in 2028 or thereabouts. And you went like, yeah, but in that league, are you ready, Rasmus? And I go, no, but that's exactly why I now have Dave Willis. He sat in the top management of Microsoft. He knows how to do that. If I start the day we decide that we want to be an IPO ready company, our finances won't be ready. So that's one thing. But number two, running a public offered company is completely different to running a scale up like I do now. I'll have to adjust my management style. I'll have to adjust my communication style. I'll have to deal with public markets. If I only start the day we decide to do that, it'll be too late. Mm-hmm. And then obviously they will look at me and go, he's not ready. But is that on the business or is that on me? Mm-hmm. Now we can combine interest, but it's also on me to say, I need to be ready for that. And I think most of us actually know what it takes. We just need that little push that you're also talking about. Hey, push ourselves, manage ourselves to say, it's not my stupid boss who's telling me what to do. It's also me taking responsibility for getting where I want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I absolutely love that. And even in the example that you mentioned, I love this idea of being ready, like making yourself ready. And that also, that it doesn't happen overnight, that's a journey that we are on. And that journey is not straight. That journey is not always easy, right? There's tons of up and downs, but actually the up and downs are what make us ready. Because like you were saying, if you have to show up so differently, that's crazy to have to change yourself, like change habits, change just the way you show up. The amount of training, kind of like you talked about with just like the training and running marathons, the amount of training you have to do, training your mindset, changing your everything to make yourself be ready for that type of a different way of being is just crazy. Like it would be mind-boggling to think about. And that's why often founders don't do well when that's publicly traded thing happens. It just does. It's hard. It's really, there are some that can make the move, but a lot can. And I think it's that readiness idea.
I think for me, Aaron Levy from Box is one of those where I look up to and go, he took it all the way from founding it in a bedroom, and now he runs a billion dollar public offering company. But that's not necessarily for anyone. Mm-hmm. And again, I think a lot of my thinking here is shaped by, I was lucky enough, I played on a half decent basketball team in Denmark, and we were lucky enough to get an American coach. And we were good athletes, but we were terrible at playing the game. And he literally sat us down and went, we're going to go through fundamentals. And when you have the fundamentals in place, feel free to take crazy shots, because the likelihood that they will go in, but don't expect to take crazy shots all the time and then think that you will win the game. Fundamentals win you the game. And when you need that extra shot, I mean, I'm sure that the final shot by Steph Curry in the Olympic finals with LeBron and KD open, I'm sure that that's actually fundamentals kicking in. It was a crazy shot with that level of talent open, but he knew he would make it. That's not because it's a crazy shot. That's fundamentals. That's leadership on a super high level, super precious situation. But it's pattern recognition, and it's the fundamentals that saves him on that one, right?
Oh, I love that pattern recognition. I was just watching some clip. Clips always come up with Kobe because it's just, wow, what the mind on that guy. And he was saying like, are you nervous for this game? And he goes, why would I be nervous? Like, I've run that like 250 times. Like, I already know, like what you just said, I see the success. I see me achieving. The achievement's already there without me having done it. And I just think, wow, from a self-leadership example,
Yeah.
Thinking about just that level of intentionality and that idea of the basics. Like it's people say, oh, actually, so spectacular. It's spectacular because the person did it 250 times before they actually went to do it.
Yeah. And he feels very comfortable in himself. And I think that's also what shapes you as a leader. I've been lucky enough to be an understudy. I only stepped up to be CEO close to 50, but there's no way I can repay the lessons learned along the way. I worked for 13 years with a CEO, and we were part of shaping companies, selling companies, raising funds for companies as an understudy. And that when you step up to that role, one, you find out how lonely the CEO role is, and how much different agendas you actually unintentionally will have between the teams on resources and all that. But you also feel very confident, and I think that's the Kobe thing, that, hey, I've seen this before. I know what this is. I think I can deal with this. At least I have 3 options for how I will solve this. And that, I think, that is one of those things that you feel with age, and you feel that it doesn't have to come to you super, super, super early. And for me, if I might have diverted a little bit, I try to take my Fridays, and I still work those from home. I still have production to do and all that. But I also just go to my local cafe, and when I have their young startup people who go, hey, Rasmus, can you give me an advice and all that? Since our LinkedIn game is on point, so people in Denmark know that we are here and all that. And they go, can we get an advice and stuff like that? And I just had a young founder, and they're lucky enough that they received a term sheet and all those kind of things. But he talked to me like he was raising funds and and he went like, oh, it feels like you've gone through it all before. And he was in his early 20s, an amazing team. And I'm just like building stuff on AI, and I'm keeping myself sharp by talking to this guy. I feel like that's fantastic. But he goes, I can just see that you have the pattern recognition. And when he was done, he went like, called me and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I went, listen, the only thing I did was I kept asking. I gave you some of the guidance, and I asked you, and you did the right thing, because he had 3 pushing for his business.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm 100% sure he made the right choice. I think that if you can lean on somebody, and I try to be very conscious of giving that back, because my career has been a constant somebody pushing me, somebody being very stern with me, somebody being very uplifting, somebody being very, try this and see if you will fail. Somebody's giving me stuff that I wasn't ready to manage and all of that. And I'm just going, of course, I'm the CEO of the business I run, but try to be a leader also for the next generation. My kids are 19 and 22, so it's also to be something for that generation that comes up after us.
I love it. Thinking about have you ever seen Akeelah and the Bee, that movie Akeelah and the Bee?
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. And when you said that to me, it made me think of the 1,000 coaches kind of thing that they talk about. She talks about in that, where it's like everywhere you go, people are trying to help you. And as they see you start to lift off, they want to be a part of it. And but I also love that idea of mentorship. We really have to give back. And I'm where you're at. I'm over 50, and I just cover all my grays. And and it is that same thing. I do same with you. I get a lot of people that reach out, and I rarely say no, because I want to be like able to help them if I can. I can't always. Sometimes people see me from stage and they think, oh, she's the person to talk to about this. And I'm like, I'm not the expert in this particular thing. I'm the expert over here, and so I only give them what I know I can give them. I'm not going to give them just out of the thin air, and so with us, we have experience. Good, bad, or different. We have experience. And so I totally get where you're coming from in that regard. So I'm curious to know, are there times now that you're at the 200 team member place? Is there a time you can think of when maybe you weren't that leader who really was like human success? I want to uplift people. I want to be the mentor. Maybe you weren't that caring leader. You weren't that leader with heart. Can you think of a specific example where maybe that showed up for you, or you look back and go, oh, like, I can't believe I ever did that or said that or whatever. But then what did you do to potentially come out more enlightened? What was the thing that kind of was a trigger for you to come out on the other side? And I don't mean perfect, because that's not what I mean. I just mean, like, what did you became better?
You won't get that from me.
Yeah.
I still work to be done. Work in progress.
Totally. I do too. I'm like, I talk about this, write about this. Oh my gosh. And I'm still sitting here like going, why did I just do that? Was an idiotic thing to do. So can you think of a specific story that the listeners would be able to learn from?
I think if I take 3 steps, my fundamental is actually a sporting mentality. So it's always about coach. And I was never the greatest athlete. And that meant that I already had that idea that, hey, if you can coach the team and put the team together, that's always the way I think about it. If I then go through the motions, then especially as a young leader, impatience is high in me too, not the force in this context. There, I can give you a number of examples where you end up overreacting to something that doesn't happen quick enough, and you don't take the timeline to have or take this. I think over time you slow down a little bit. It's not that it's the clarity of decision and pattern recognition actually slows up the tempo or speeds up the tempo, but you slow down the decision because this pattern of, hey, input reaction, and you feel like you have to react immediately, has only brought me into situations where you get into conflicts with the team, conflicts with team members. You give immediate feedback on something that's not what actually the long term or the long haul is for that person, which may digress the learning journey or the path you're on. And that for me, this slow down, rely on your pattern recognition. Obviously, that's difficult to do when you're young, but that's what I try to tell every one of these young people that I talk to. Hey, it's not the speed of responding, it's the thoughtfulness and then responding, because that's how you get further. And then I will say that I'm shaped by one very critical experience in my life, which was to be humble about what I know and what I don't know. And it's a very stern French CEO who pulls me in. I run at the product management team at a senior level at the time. And he looks at me and goes, Rasmus, I actually don't like what you do. And I go, like, if I look around the room, I'm definitely one of the better ones on this team. And he goes, you've never carried the bag. And I go, what? Yeah, you are an absolute amazing product leader, but you've never been selling. So all of the stuff you tell the salespeople, oh, this can make $1 million, this can do all that, all of your business cases, go try and execute. And I looked at him and went, what? And he went, here's a sales territory. By the way, the sales review is on Tuesday. And I looked at him and went like, that's not my desire. That's not what I want to be doing. And he went, it'll make you better. And I started and I made all the errors you can make on that first review. And if anyone's run a sales pipeline review, you can take everything apart. And he gave me a scolding on how much enterprise value we would have lost had we been a public company or that. And by the way, Rasmus, the next review is on Thursday. And I made all the rookie mistakes. You call your budget and all those kind of things. Same thing Thursday. I learned from it, kind of figure out where we end up doing and all of that. And I run this for, I think, 9 months or something. And he pulls us back. And actually, he moved the CTO to be the leader of product. And he said, you're just building whatever you want to be building. You should actually run product. And then he moved both of us back. And as a formative thing in my career, it says, be careful of the person next to you and what they are doing and how important that is to the business. And the same CEO, actually the CEO after him, gave me then a full engineering department. I've never run an engineering department. So I got 400 people in an engineering department. Try run that, where you again take it very humbly and you try to understand instead of just being wise on other people's behalf. And that basically shaped the thought process of what's next to you, what do the other departments do, and what is the intersection between how you make that work. And you could say that was not very caring. It felt very stern. It felt very direct. But in the aftermath, the same CEO invites his leadership team at that time now to the British Automotive Club in London and sit us all down. And of the 6 of us, 1 has his own venture fund. 4 of us are CEOs, and the last one is still the CTO. So sometimes it's also the caring leadership is also just knowing when to tell somebody you need to step out of your own feel good, try the other thing, and then come back to where your center of strength is. And I think that's very, very helpful.
That's like a big, very big learning, thinking about people often think that caring leadership is soft or that it's only the warm, fuzzy stuff.
Yeah.
And I 100% disagree, because there are times when like this CEO, this French CEO, who was like, he was like pushing you. He was pushing you because he knew you could be better. He knew you could be more. And he just was like, nope, I'm not letting you settle. I am not letting you settle. There was so much care embedded in those actions. that now
Yeah.
produces the CEO you are today, which is kind of crazy to think about that legacy and of the others, like you said, the other people that were also impacted in a positive way. It hurt. It was very painful. It caused all that anxiety. There's all these things that happen. But in the end, there was a ton and ton of care and heart that's embedded in his actions towards you. And you grew like beyond whatever you ever thought you could do, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say this about caring, because we have the same thing with human success. So when we say, oh, that's human success, everyone thinks that's only giving each other's hugs and be, yay, hey, it's group with therapy almost. But it's not. It's actually, if you take the two words, human is very soft. And the way we try to articulate it in the business, we want to be our own best case study. So we try to articulate human success also as the values of leadership, because human, showing us up as a good human is my responsibility. It's everyone on the team. Making sure we all feel good as humans, that's my responsibility, along with everyone else on the team. It's actually a common thing. And that is a soft, touchy word. And it should make sure that if Heather's not smiling when she comes in the morning, take care of her, try to lift her up, all of that. But success is a hard master, because success, how do you measure that? Is coming into, I mean, if we stay in the sports analogy, coming in second, is that success? Not if you aim to win and you were the best and you only came in second and you lost the final. Then it's something different. And success is a hard master. But at the same token that you talk about human, I'm responsible for showing up as a good human. We are responsible for the team feeling as good humans. I'm also responsible for showing up and delivering success. And we are responsible for the team success. And the interesting intersect is that if you have caring without the success, the organization falls apart. If you have success without caring, that also falls apart. And with human success, I feel like, at least the way I get to articulate it, it's almost the distilled version of everything I've experienced, because I've been in so many organizations where we had 5 leadership principles, 9 leadership principles. And when you ask people, then they remember 3 of them. It's empathy, quality, strive for result. And you go, no, human and success. If you felt like you were the best human you could be to Heather when we had the conversation, you've lived up to the values. If you and Heather together delivered success because of the outcome, you've been the best pair, the best team that you could possibly be. And that means it's easier to remember, and it's actually fairly nice underpinning to all the technology we put underneath how to do this, because the key here is there's never a technology component that will solve this for a high-performing team. Never. Because then why would sports ever exist? And all predictions would be, hey, this team wins every time and that's it. But they don't.
Nope. So true. And it has so many, it is a kind of a complicated mix when you, in order to even produce those teams that are winning, right? And you're right, it is the human component. I mean, there may be some AI behind it. I know we've seen some of this stuff before, but in the end, there's so much related to the human side. And we go back to the Kobe example, thinking about the level of doing the basics, the consistency, and seeing that right before you, there is no fear. It's because you've already done it 250 times before you actually have gotten on the court. That is the way to do it. And I think that's the same thing with how thoughtfully, one of the things I have, it's a practice called the cycle of active listening. And it has embedded in it this idea that once we receive feedback or have an interaction, going to what your point was earlier, we do something called decoding, and we take the time to kind of reflect on, to research, talk to other people about what we got in the seeking stage, in the receiving input stage. And then we decide how we're going to act, and then we go act accordingly. And then we go back to the person, let them know what we're going to do on their behalf, how we acted or going to act on their behalf. But it's that pause, it's that decoding phase that imparts the respect, that does uplift. It makes them understand how important they are, and it makes us make the right decisions in the moment. So it's just funny how all of these things do intertwine. And that same thing would be for, if we take 250 times of doing the thing before we do the thing, we have already worked through all those kinks. And now when we're like way more precise. So the success was already going to be there anyway.
It's so funny. I wish I had met you like 20 years ago, because all the things I talked about with quick reaction patterns would have been eliminated. Maybe I'd been better over the course of the longevity. But yeah, hey, here we are.
And yet here you are in a palace in Denmark. I mean, right? This is this is the reality of it all.
That's the reality we work with today.
So for those who are listening right now, what might be a couple pearls of wisdom you would leave them with as it relates to just like them as leaders, them growing, them, what might be a couple things you would it'd just be like great things to leave. They could be at a crossroads in their leadership. They could be just looking for a little extra motivation. What might be a couple things you'd leave them with today?
I think if we stack up what we've just talked about, be certain of your fundamentals because they guide your decisions, and that sets your clarity of decision and your certainty of decisions. So always research that, be very certain of that. This thing about pace, I think, is another one, because if you have that mental, it's not always a long pause, but if you have that mental strength to say, resist the answer right now and get over it and take the time to make that decision, you always have that to fall back on. And as you said prior in the talk here, business will be ups, it will be down, it will be seasons of winning, seasons of not winning. It will be then sales works, then finance doesn't work, then something works. And if you're constantly on the edge with everything that doesn't work and you don't trust your fundamentals and your level of judgment, you show up to work every day concerned and worried. And that's kind of to my last point, which is I try to show up with a smile every day. I know I do. Because my theory is if you live 80 years or whatever the average is now for a male, coming to work unhappy every day, don't do it. I mean, show up with a spark and an energy, give that to the rest of the team. 80 years living with misery is a long life to live. Living with inspiring people, putting happiness into it, believing in what you're doing, having good fundamentals, good certainty of decision. I think that's how you succeed with your, if I may use your word, the self-leadership and caring leadership, but it's also how you succeed as a person, because otherwise it becomes very, very dark and closed and all of that. And even hard decisions show up with a smile and the enthusiasm and the knowledge that this is not not a fantastic decision, maybe that feels in front of other people. There are decisions that are not particularly positive in that sense, but show up with the energy and the interest in the other person to help them on with their way. And the thing is, if you've done a great job as a leader, if that ever happens to you, and that's the that's the conversation you have to tell somebody they leave the business, make sure they're net better off and they will find a better job. Even if they leave on your terms, if they leave on your own terms, on their own terms, I should say, celebrate it. Because that means you've built somebody from an employee to a director to a VP to a C-level exec. And if that ever happens, go back, have a little bit of a coffee or champagne or whatever your vice is, and go, that's also my win. Because that meant they got better under your leadership, they grew, they believed in themselves, they have the fundamentals to dare to take that step up.
Boom. Wow, mic drop, Rasmus. Really amazing. That's very good. For those who are listening, I don't know if you're as inspired as I am, because now I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this leadership thing on Monday. I'm ready right now. Thank you for coming on. Oh my gosh, for those who are listening, make sure that you share this far and wide. This is the kind of stuff that it's the good stuff of leadership, and we need to share it. And, again, thank you for being on here, imparting your great knowledge. Thank you for the work that you do. I do think that the human success component and uplifting people at work and ensuring, better workplaces is going to takes a village. And so I'm happy to have you in that village too, Rasmus.
I'm happy to be in that village with you. Really a fantastic podcast. Just the smile, the energy leaves me with a huge smile to go enjoy dinner with the family and have another smile from a different angle.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.